Well, hello once again from St. Peter's Anglican Church here in Comox, British Columbia. I'm Alan Naylor. I'm the interim priest here at St. Peter's and happy to be with you once again for our weekly musings on the Sunday readings. And I'll start right away with a portion of our reading for tomorrow from Luke's Gospel, chapter 21. Jesus' disciples were remarking on how the Jerusalem temple was adorned with beautiful stones. But Jesus said, "The time will come when not one stone will be left on another. Every one of them will be thrown down." "When will these things happen?" they asked. "And what will be the sign that they are about to take place?" He replied, "Look out that you are not deceived. For many will come in my name, claiming, 'I am he,' and 'the time is near.' Don't follow them. When you hear of wars and uprisings, don't be frightened. These things must happen first, but the end will not come right away. Nation will rise against nation. There will be earthquakes and famines and pestilences in various places, and great signs from heaven. But before all this, they will seize you and persecute you, and you will be brought before kings and governors on account of my name. But don't worry how you will defend yourselves, for I will give you words and wisdom that they will not be able to contradict, and not a hair of your head will perish. Stand firm, and you will win life." That's the end of the reading. You know, when I see pictures of that beautiful temple and what it must have looked like, I always think of Michelangelo, in my opinion, one of the greatest artistic geniuses ever. His sculptures of the human form in white marble are stunning, like the statue of David in Florence and the Pieta, Jesus lying in his mother's lap in Rome. And the way the marble's carved, one can almost see the flesh moving. And then there's that magnificent dome of St. Peter's in the Vatican, which was probably his greatest architectural feat. But surely his best work was with the paintbrush, especially his frescoes in the Sistine Chapel in Rome. First on the ceiling, about twice the length and breadth of this church. And beginning in 1508, those took 4 years to complete, with scenes from the book of Genesis, the stories of creation, the Garden of Eden, and the Great Flood. But even more stunning are his paintings on the great wall behind the high altar, which took another 6 years to finish. And they depicted the day of judgment and the second coming of Christ, with terrifying scenes of demons dragging the sinful off to hell. Even the saints who are assured of a place in heaven with Christ have looks on their faces as troubled as those who are doomed for eternal damnation. You know, these and many other pieces of art from that era, known as the Renaissance, forever influenced stereotypical thinking about the second coming of Christ. The artists were mostly inspired by books in the Bible, such as Daniel and Zechariah in the Old Testament and Revelation at the end of the New Testament, which describe apocalyptic visions and dreams, which are word pictures meant to depict the mystery of the end times. The imaginations of the artists were also influenced by what Jesus had to say about the end, and most of what he did say came when he was in and around that temple in Jerusalem. The temple in Jerusalem was the focal point for all Jewish worship. The first one was built mainly of wood by King Solomon in about 900 BC, and it stood for about 400 years before it was destroyed by the Babylonians. But within 100 years, the second temple was begun, and a few centuries later, around the time of Jesus' birth, it was expanded and renovated by King Herod. And a thing of beauty it was too. almost Michelangelo-like in appearance. Gleaming white limestone and marble blocks inlaid with gold and precious stones. It inspired many, especially pilgrims from out of town who would try to get there at least once a year at the Passover. And it's during a moment of admiration, looking down over the temple from the Mount of Olives, that Jesus popped their balloon by saying to his disciples, "You know, the day will come when not one stone will be left." And they naturally wanted to know when, how, why, who. The temple actually was demolished by the Romans just about 35 years later, around 70 AD. But that's probably not what Jesus was referring to. Instead of answering their questions, he warned his followers of bigger things, much bigger things to come. There'll be false teachers, he said, wars, earthquakes, plagues, famine, signs from heaven. And then he spoke about the difficulties his followers would face, but assuring them that they will receive the help they need. By endurance you will gain your soul, he said. Not a hair on your head will perish. Stand firm, and you will win life. And so about a generation later, those were words that the early church glommed onto as it faced terrible persecutions. They were words of encouragement which gave meaning to their suffering. But those words also led some in the early church to an attitude of wait and see. They remembered those predictions Jesus had made before he died. The temple hadn't been destroyed yet, but the Roman threats were there. Earthquakes, wars, diseases were rampant in their time. The persecutions were vicious, which to them were the signs that Jesus spoke of, which would herald his imminent return to gather up all things and establish God's reign on earth. And so some were obsessed and were paralyzed, really, over the expectation that the end of the world and Christ's return were imminent. He told us we'd be fine, they thought. So let's just chill and wait till he comes. Which is the situation in Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, which we will also read tomorrow. We hear some of you are living in idleness, Paul wrote. The Greek word that's used there is ataktos, which is actually a military term for soldiers who break rank or stand out of line or behave as if they don't care about their mission anymore. They've given up. Paul was referring to those in the church who had given up, doing no work nor ministry because they saw no point. Jesus was coming soon, so all one had to do was wait for the defeat of all that was evil, the new order that the second coming would bring, the new heaven and new earth that the prophet Isaiah spoke of. And since not a hair on their head would be harmed and their souls would be saved, ataktos was the best option. But Paul said to them, absolutely not. Keep on doing your work quietly and conscientiously. Don't hold back from doing what is right. Effectively, he was saying what a sergeant major might yell out at an out-of-line soldier. Fall in, rejoin the ranks, keep on working and engaging with the world. Do your bit for the mission of the church, especially in places where it's struggling. Why? Because Jesus said, by endurance you will gain your soul. Stand firm and you will win life. In other words, it's in the struggle that our souls are saved. It's in our disappointments and impatience and restlessness and working out differences that we most deeply encounter the love and grace of God. Now, our context may be different from the disciples with Jesus in Jerusalem and different from the people to whom Paul wrote. Buildings may not be collapsing around us, thanks to those who care for our property, and persecutions may not be our reality, but our lives, our community, our church, they face their own threats and crises. Sometimes the things we have built are shaken or even collapse, like plans for the future, or a favorite project, or a particular ministry that's special to us, or a parish that looks different than it used to be, or than we had hoped it would be. So many things we have invested energy and emotion into can appear to be threatened or changed or destroyed by quakes of one kind or another. And that's when we might go ataktos, giving up, feeling we've done enough and will let others look after whatever comes next. In those moments, we need to hear those promises of Jesus, which refer not only to some eternal future way down the road, but also to the here and now. As people of faith, it reminds us of the reassurances we have that in the fear and turmoil of catastrophe and change, God is active, healing, comforting, strengthening, reconciling, recreating out of whatever chaos swirls around. The point is, we don't sit back and wait idly for something miraculous to happen. We don't sit back and wait for Christ's return, because he's returning all the time, in the work of the church, in our ministries, in our prayer and worship life. We experience it and live it in the presence. Jesus said, "Not a hair on your head will perish." Well, some of us may have lost a bit of hair already, but he also said, "By your endurance you gain your soul. You will win life." Amen. And now I pray God's richest blessings on you and all those you love, today and always. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.